I work with people worldwide who would like this help from clergy after they are no longer going into active states of possession. Today, we are talking about the process of deliverance and specifically the official renunciation. Let's get into it. What's up, guys? This is Teresa Yanaros. Thank you so much for coming on to my channel. Hit the like, hit the subscribe, hit the bell, hit the notification button, hit all the buttons, do all the things. Today, we are talking about deliverance being a process. We had a video last week. I'm going to link it up here. You can watch that if you haven't yet. But today, we're going to get specific. What does that process actually look like? Now, I am the case manager for a few different deliverance ministries. I'm the director of education for the Society of St. Michael, and I actually work in deliverance ministry. I'm a licensed deliverance minister. So today, we're going to actually talk about the beginning stages of that process for somebody that has realized that they need to go through the deliverance process. So at this point, they're working with a team. They've gone through an intake interview. There's been a determination that they actually do need to work with a team for deliverance prayers. For someone coming out of the occult, we have a very specific first section of items that we tackle with them. The first thing that they're going to go through is auricular confession, and then they're going to do what's called an official renunciation. Now, the renunciation that we use comes from the Old Catholic Rite, and I actually wanted to take a moment to sort of go over that rite with you so that you understand what that looks like. So this is actually one of our binders that we use, and we have the rite, renouncement, and exorcism of the occult tie and third eye. So I'm just going to quickly go over what this looks like so that you understand what a renunciation is. So there are some prayers in here, and then there's an actual renunciation that the afflicted will say out loud, and this is them renouncing out loud Satan and the occult. So they go through that, and then they actually say this prayer, and this is to cut off the ties of the occult. And what's interesting is that this is a really good thing to do with a priest. This is what is interesting about this. Yes, you can find all kinds of renunciations online and in books and things like that. You can go through it on your own. That's totally fine. But when it comes to people coming out of the occult, it's really good to do this with a priest, because if you have any sort of attachments and there are any manifestations, you can have that exorcist there that is available to go into any form of deliverance or exorcism prayers as needed. Then the next section, they're actually confessing their sins, and then there's an absolution by the priest. The next thing that they go through is a profession of faith. And so they pray that, and then there is actually a minor form of exorcism in this rite. And so this is where the exorcist will come in and do the exorcism of the spirits of divination and the occult third eye. So this is the section of the official renunciation where there's actually the closing of the occult third eye, and the exorcist goes through that. After the exorcist finishes the minor form of exorcism, the afflicted goes through the prayer to the venerable cross. I think that this can either be taken out or left in. And then there's a final blessing. So that's the official renunciation. And so it's really not that long. It takes about like less than 10 minutes. But what we find is that people coming out of the occult, there might be manifestations. There might be demonics that will present themselves during that official renunciation. And then we will usually pivot at that point into whatever form of major exorcism if that's needed. And that's obviously up to the exorcist. The exorcist is in charge. We're just there to pray with the afflicted and cover them in prayer as the team. And the exorcist is the one doing the imprecatory commanding prayers and all of that. And so that's the official renunciation. It's important to understand this, because when people come out of the occult, they might not know if they have any attachments or not. And in fact, the demons sometimes submerge. And then whenever they go through that official renunciation, then they start to manifest. And so for people that might be coming out of the occult thinking like, well, do I have any attachments? It can be good to go through this official renunciation as a means to check that box and just make sure that you are clear. Also, I find that there's a mental component of this. When someone comes out of the occult, they're really wanting to make sure that they've closed all those doors. And in my opinion, obviously this is not something that has to be done for anyone coming out of the occult. That's not what I'm saying. But what I see is it being so efficacious along people's journey that when they do get completely free, this was the first step of that. And it seems to be a really efficacious prayer that they go through, and an efficacious step, because I think there's something about going through this auricular confession, confessing those occult sins to the priest, and then going through immediately into an official renunciation where you're using your words and your whole heart and you're praying to the Lord to deliver you, and having the priest there, having the exorcist there to do that minor rite of exorcism in with this official renunciation. It's just very beautiful. And we see people experience a tremendous amount of healing through this. And some people go through a renunciation and that's all they needed to do. There's no deliverance prayers or exorcism needed after that. They feel that relief and they go on with their lives and it's fine. And I even find that for anyone who has left the occult, even if, let's say, they don't even have any demonic attachments or they simply just don't know, it is a peace of mind, because it's something that the previously afflicted person wants to go through just so that they have that peace of mind and they know that they can move on saying, like, I have officially renounced these things. I've gone through that process with the priest. I've received that absolution. I've received that grace. And I just see so much beautiful healing come out of this step of the process, which is why I'm so passionate about this part of it. And I am in this intersection where I am able to work with not only priests who are getting trained up to be exorcists, but I also work with people, mainly women, that are coming out of the occult. And so there's this sort of bridge that I can provide where it's getting people that are afflicted in touch with priests who are coming in to play those roles, right? So I actually wanted to end this video on something that I found really, really interesting. When I went to Rome and I went to the Athenaeum and I was in Vatican City attending this course at the Vatican University, and I'm there with these exorcists from all over the world, mainly Roman Catholic, but also Anglican and Orthodox, I got to ask a few questions. And I wanted to share with you guys one of the questions that I asked because I thought it was fascinating to hear the response. And so I'm actually going to read off this question and then I'm going to read you guys the response. And so you can hear about what a Roman Catholic exorcist believes about this concept that we're talking about, which is to say the official renunciation. So this was my question. I said, my question is about exorcism of only the possessed. Spiritually afflicted persons, after leaving the occult, often experience heavy vexation and depression, bruises, even feelings of being raped by demons, homicidal ideation. We find that deliverance prayers, official renunciations, and minor and sometimes major exorcisms are effective to achieve full liberation. Often the spiritually afflicted persons cannot get this help in their churches because their priest will say that they are not possessed. I work with people worldwide who would like this help from clergy after they are no longer going into active states of possession. How might we be able to expand this ministry of exorcism to include this additional help? So before I read the answer, I just want to give a little bit of a climate here so you guys can step into this arena and see what goes on here. Across the world, a lot of priests, especially Roman Catholic priests, will say if a person is not possessed, they're looking at the 26 indicators that a person might be possessed. If they meet with a person and they determine, oh, we don't think you're possessed, they're going to say, just lean into your faith and you don't need an exorcism. That's often what they're going to say. And so since people run into that, let's say that they are feeling heavily demonically oppressed or even vexation, experiencing bruises on the body and things like that. I was working with a woman in the academy that I run as she was coming out of the occult, and she was experiencing those things. When she tried to get rid of occult items or even just to pull them out of her basement, we were going to get them to a priest so that he could get rid of them. And even just pulling those items out of her basement, she came under heavy attack. She had bruises all over her body. And this is what she was dealing with: heavy oppression, demonic nightmares, even lights changing color when she would try to pray. The demons were trying to distract her in all of these ways and scare her. And when she went to this Roman Catholic priest, that is the one in charge in her country for determining who is going to receive an exorcism, he determined, well, you're not possessed. Even though she had been previously possessed when she was in the occult, she experienced possession before, and now she was in the church following Christ, very heavily leaning into her faith, doing all those things, but she's still coming under heavy oppression. And the priests were like, well, we're not going to work with you, right? Now, this video is specifically about the official renunciation, right? I'm at this point not even talking about major exorcism. I'm talking about this particular rite, which is in the old Catholic rite. It's a Catholic rite. And it's so important. And I'll talk about this particular case because once she finally got the help she needed through the Anglican communion, she was able to work with us in the Society of St. Michael. She goes through this official renunciation and she starts to come under heavy attack in it. But then she's freed after this and some sessions of major exorcism. So she's a case, and this we see way more than just her case. This is just one case that I'm talking about right now, where she did need even major exorcism to get fully freed. And so even though she wasn't possessed at the time that she was following Christ for a year and a half before she went through these prayers, it was efficacious for her and important for her to go through that, even from a spiritual standpoint, not just a mental or emotional standpoint for herself. So that is a thread that I think is so important, that I felt like I needed to ask this question at the Athenaeum, because it's something that in my ministry, in the academy I run with people coming out of the occult, is important. So I think it's important to bring this up with priests. So I wanted to hear what the priest had to say. So I asked this question. It was on a panel of an Anglican priest, an Orthodox priest, and a Roman Catholic priest. And the Roman Catholic priest answered. And this is Father Francois Dermine. He's in the Roman Catholic Church. He is a professor at the Athenaeum, which is to say the Vatican University. He is also an exorcist with a lot of years of experience. This is what he said to my question. He said, yes, the aftermath effect. He calls it the aftermath effect. So he said, he referred to this as things after deliverance, other manifestations. So when he used the word deliverance, and of course there was a language barrier, there were translations occurring because he was saying this in Italian. This would mean to say when the person chooses Christ, right? When a person leans into their faith, any manifestations that happen after that, he calls that the aftermath effect. He said, it is prudent to resort to real exorcism. That is a quote. He called it prudent in these cases to resort to real exorcism and often prayers of liberation. He used to be in the Diocese of Ancona, Italy, and he was appointed to perform exorcism on whatever cases he deemed necessary. And he said that he believed it was worthy for people that were heavily targeted by the enemy, right? So people that are going through oppression and vexation, he would work with them and he would go through rites of exorcism with them. Then he moved to a diocese where the bishop would determine yes or no. And this isn't even a bishop that he said would even meet with the person. He would just talk to the priest and determine whether or not it was something that he deemed necessary. So I found that response very interesting because it was an affirmation to me that the way that we are working with these victims as they're coming out of occult bondage and they're trying to figure out all this, there's a lot of different factors obviously here, and I'll link the article down below, 4 Factors of Deliverance, because again, there are lots of factors at play here. But I find when we're dealing with people coming out of the occult, it's really nice to go ahead and check these boxes. So if a person is coming out and they're leaning into Christ, we have this path laid out before them that they feel they're covered, right? They're able to lean in and go, okay, now I'm going to prepare for, I'm going to do my examination of conscience. I'm going to get all this sussed out and really go into prayer and be with the Lord and understand and become aware of my sin. I'm going to go through auricular confession with a priest, and then I'm going to kneel before the cross. I'm going to be there in front of Jesus at the altar, often with a monstrance right there, and go through this official renunciation and go through that minor form of exorcism at the end of it, go through the closing of the occult third eye. And then after that, if there are any other prayers needed, we can assess that. But this is something that's so important for everyone to understand about occult bondage and deliverance. And so I'm really excited to make this video. I know that this is going to be very important for priests as they're sussing out how they want to function in these ways in their congregation as they receive people in that might be getting free of the occult. And so I want to serve this up as an educational and informative video there for priests. And I also am serving this up for anyone who is afflicted, that maybe you've come out of the occult and you're still experiencing heavy oppression and you're trying to figure out what you need to do to get free. Maybe this is something that you should be thinking about. I'm also happy to answer any questions that you might have. Please reach out to me directly at contact@spiritsanctified.com. That would be totally fine. I'd be more than happy to have private conversations on this. Or if you feel comfortable asking questions about this topic down in the comments, please feel free to drop down there in the comments. Again, this is Teresa Yanaros. I am the founder of spiritsanctified.com. There are a lot of free articles and content on there. If you are getting out of the occult and you're trying to figure out how to get your sea legs, please go check that content out. Also, I'm going to leave a link down below to my friend Jamie's channel. I'd like you to go subscribe to her channel because she's covering content on this as well. Very important content. I'm happy to be talking about this. I feel very grateful to be able to be in this ministry where I can help people coming out of these traumatic situations. There's a tremendous amount of bad information out there online on these topics, which is one of the main reasons why I feel like I need to step out and talk about these things to demystify some of the confusion around getting free of the occult and deliverance being a process. Thank you.